Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Was Black Dragon of Apocalypse. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Acnologia watches with morbid interest as Tenro Island disappears completely because of his breath attack. Acnologia was a very scary creature to look at. He stood about 150 feet tall. Armor like black scales covered the top half of his body. He had 4 horns that stuck out backward from the sides of his head. The front of his head was round and flat, his eyes were white and piercing, his teeth were as sharp as razors, and his chin stuck out like an arrowhead. His wings were black and looked like feathers, like the wings of a bird. His legs, underbelly, and the inside of his tail were all a dull gray color. He had a long tail with a sharp 2-pronged stinger at the end. The blue tribal marks on the top half of his body were the most noticeable thing about him. The black dragon first came to the island because it knew Zeref, the black mage, was there. He wanted to kill the worthless person because of the wrongs done to him 400 years before. Zeref had already left, so fate wasn't on his side, but he did learn something from this trip. On the island, he found a group of wizards. And out of all the guilds, it had to be the one Mavis's childish guild started. He also saw the person he had fought a few months ago. Now that he thinks about it, he realizes that only one of Mavis's brats would be brave enough to fight him to the death. Even though fight isn't the right word because it only lasted about 3 minutes. Still, it's amazing that a person can live that long. It was one of the reasons he didn't kill him right then and there. Now he could have fun with more than one mage. They even had 3 people who killed dragons. Well, 4 if you count the one that was made up. He quickly realized that these dragon killers were so weak that it was funny. Compared to the slayers and mage his age, these guys were pathetic. Still, none of these mages had ever been in a war, so it was kind of expected that none of them would be as strong as the others. Also, it looked like they were getting better after a hard battle, but that wouldn't have made much of a difference. He did, however, have some fun with the master of the guild. It was impressive that he could grow taller than him and hold him off for so long so that his children could escape. But, surprise, surprise, the kids didn't listen to him and came back at full speed to fight Acnologia. The dragon couldn't help but shake his head in his mind at this. Why wasn't he shocked? People really were a stubborn bunch. They keep coming back up like roaches, no matter how hard you try to put them down. Even so, he had to admit that these people were more fun than he had expected. Even worse, the 3 dragon killers were able to push him into the water. This got his attention just a little bit, and he decided to give the kids a test to see if they were worth his time in the future. He got out of the water and got ready to attack them with his breath. When he launched his attack, the mages started putting all of their magic power together. At the last second, a sphere came out of nowhere and stopped the attack. But the collision set off a chain of events that led to a huge explosion. Now, when Acnologia looks at the empty place where the island used to be, he can feel a big mana signature under the water. The dragon laughs to himself. So they made it, huh? Those people are tough, I'll give them that much. He looks around, but he can't sense Zeref anymore. The dragon lets out a growl because he was hoping to put an end to that immortal's miserable life for good, but it looks like he was having too much fun. Well, it wasn't a complete waste of time. He was able to have some fun. He hasn't had this in a very long time. He decided it was time to go back to his hideout on Mount Zonia. He flaps his big, black wings and flies off into the distance. As he flies back home, he thinks back to when he was just like everyone else and a human. One who fought as hard and as loyally for his other soldiers as he did for himself. He was loud, rude, and stupid, just like that guy who killed the fire dragon. But the people he fought for turned on him, and the people he thought he could trust just left him to be tortured and die slowly until he was finally killed. What did he go by? So much time had passed that he forgot what his old name was. He had been called so many different things over the years. Acnologia. Kinslayer. The King of Dragons. The Black Dragon of the End of the World. The King who kills dragons. The Sign of Fright. The Dragon Dracul. The Avatar of Death. The Book of Revelation talks about the Black Dragon. All of these are just a few of the names he's had over the past 400 years. But what was his name? He hadn't used that in a long time? Again, what was it? Ruto? Nato? Menma? Naruto? Naruto. His name was that. Believe it, Naruto Uzumaki, the next Hokage of Konoha. He laughs to himself as he thinks about his old catchphrase. This is what he would yell at everyone. He thought that if he became the Hokage, people would start to respect him. He didn't realize how silly that dream really was until he was locked up. No matter what he did for them, they would never accept him. They would always think of him as a demon. A monster. Considering what he is now, that was really funny. Also, it was a stupid goal to try to be the strongest so that everyone would see you and accept you. Either people saw you for who you really were from the start, or they saw what they wanted to see. Only one person saw him for what he really was, which is a shame. A sad little boy who only wanted to be liked and accepted. He never noticed the one girl who did this for him, or maybe he couldn't accept her. She was the only one who tried to visit him in jail to make him feel better, not to make fun of him. When she told him she loved him, it was the first time in a very long time that he felt truly happy and at peace with his death. On that day, they made a promise to each other that they swore they would keep for the rest of their lives. After everything he had been through in his second life, Naruto or Acnologia had long since forgotten that promise. He was curious about the girl's life and whether she was as strong as she said she would be. He wishes he could see her again, but he can't go back to his old world by himself. He could ask one of the dragons for help. But he got rid of that idea as soon as it came to him. He couldn't get any of the dragons or their allies to help him with anything. Even more so after the killings he started 400 years ago. He won't say that he didn't like causing death and destruction, but not all of it was his fault. But there was no point in arguing about who was to blame. He did wonder, though, why neither the dragon race's elders nor its gods had done anything to stop him. He might get an answer if he talks to them. But before he could think about it anymore, a bright flash of light came out of nowhere and blocked his view. He snarls at anyone who is stupid enough to try to surprise him. Who dares to come before Acnologia, the Dragon King? Acnologia didn't get an answer as the light got brighter and grew around him. When Acnologia finally gets his sight back, all he sees around him is a white void that never ends. He groans because he is angry. Who called me here? Don't be a coward, show yourself. Who the hell are you? You look like a big lizard. Someone yelled from behind him. When he turns around to see who was yelling at him, he is shocked. The first person was a woman who was tall and thin. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She had blood-red hair that reached her ankles and 2 fringe that reached her shoulders on each side of her face. On the left side of her head, there was a black hair clip. Her eyes were violet and her skin was light. She wore a green dress with a loose fit over a white blouse with a high collar. She looked pretty upset. The other man was 5 feet 9 inches tall and tanned. He had blonde hair that was spiky. His eyes were a very dark blue color. He wore a blue sweatshirt with long sleeves and 2 red swirls on each arm. He also wore a vest that was light green and had 6 pockets on the front. The white cloak with the fire patterns at the bottom was the most noticeable thing he was wearing. The man tried to make the woman feel better. He paid the most attention to the third one because it shocked him the most. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She wore a light lavender kimono-style blouse without sleeves that was tied around her waist with a violet obi. She wore black high-heeled boots with thigh-high stockings and short dark navy trousers. Her dark blue hair was cut in a hem at the front and went past her waist. 2 of her fringe reached her chin. Her eyes stood out because they didn't have pupils and had a hint of lavender in them. The last person who lived there was a huge orange fox with 9 tails. He always kept his eyes on the dragon in front of him. Acnologia was shocked by what he was seeing. Before him were Kushina Uzumaki, Minato Namikaze, Hinata Hyuga, and the Kyuubi, or Kurama, as he told him right before he died. The black dragon thought that someone was messing with him and making a bad joke. Well, he wasn't in the mood to play games with his mind. In his anger, he spreads his wings and starts to use his magic, which puts everyone on guard. Okay, you've had your fun. Now show yourselves, you damn cowards. I'm not in the mood for your tricks, so come out in the open. Kushina yelled, "Hey, I was talking to you, you big garden lizard. Listen when I talk to you, TT Ebane." Acnologia looks at Kushina with a scowl on his face, as if he is annoyed, and then points one of his claws at her. "I have nothing to say to you, woman. Take your blonde idiot of a husband and go fuck each other's brains out until you die, because that's all you two are good at, fucking and dying." Minato and Hinata's jaws dropped when they heard the insult, and Kurama bit his lip hard to keep from laughing. All of that stopped when everyone felt a dark aura and turned to see that Kushina was not in the least bit amused. In fact, she was angry in every way you can think of. Her hair was split into 9 tails, and her face and eyes were the same color as her hair. She wanted blood, and bloody hell, she's going to get it. She yelled at him, "You rat. Let's see if you can mean to me when I have you in a cage." Suddenly, a bunch of golden chains came out of her body and went straight for him. Acnologia takes to the air because she knows what those chains can do and wants to avoid getting caught as much as possible. He roared at her, "Your chains might be able to catch a Biju, but let's get a few things straight. I'm not a lizard, I'm a dragon, and I'm not a Biju, so those chains are just a bother to me." Kushina got even more angry, but before she could say anything, there was a huge chakra pulse. Kushina and Acnologia both turned to see Hinata, who had her Byakugan turned on, staring at both of them with great intensity. "Both of you, enough. We're in the middle of nowhere, and the two of you are acting like two children having a temper tantrum. Kushina, I know you're mad at his insults, but you need to let this go. For all we know, he could be as good as or better than Kurama." "That's debatable, Hinata," Kurama grumbled. Hinata glared at Kurama in anger as she turned around. "Whatever. We need to calm down and think this through. Can we all please do that?" she told everyone. Before she turned to the dragon above them, no one argued with her. "Dragon-sama, please come down so we can talk. We don't mean any harm, so let's talk in a civilized way and find a way out of here," the girl said. Acnologia looked at her in amazement. He had seen a different girl before he was put to death. He laughed to himself, "It looks like she kept her promise to me after all. Okay, Hinata-chan, let's talk." Hinata was a little scared by the way she was called, but she nodded anyway. Kushina and Minato were also worried and a little scared by how familiar this dragon seemed to be with them. "Dragon-sama, how did you know Hinata-san's name? And how did you know Kushina and I were married?" Minato asked with a calculating look. "You also knew what a Biju was and that Kushina's chains can affect them. How do you know so much about us, since there are no dragons in our dimension, world?" Kurama asked in a suspicious way. Everyone looks at the dragon in front of them. He was trying to decide what he should say. He chose to have a little fun with it. "I used to live in your world, which is why I know so much about it." Everyone was surprised by this because they had heard that a black dragon was roaming around the elemental nations. Minato asked Kurama and Hinata, who both shook their heads, "How?" "As far as I know, there are no dragons in our world." "Are there?" "You've never seen me because I used to be a human, a person you all know very well, before I changed into this form." That took them by surprise. He used to be a person? A person everyone knew? But the question remained. What human did Kurama, Hinata, Minato, and Kushina know? As the first two thought more about what the dragon said, a pit began to form in their stomachs. Acnologia looked at the girl and gave her a smile with teeth that made the girl 10 times more scared. "Hinata Hyuga, you've changed a lot more than I thought you would. You're no longer the shy girl I used to know who could barely finish a sentence." Hinata took a step back, and the pit in her stomach got bigger. Kurama could be said to be the same. He can't be the one. Hinata thought, please don't let it be him. Are you really doing this? Have you turned into the monster standing in front of me? Kurama thought in a sad way. Minato and Kushina still didn't know what to do, but they could feel a pit opening up for them. What is this feeling of dread I'm getting? Thought the two. Hinata took a deep breath before she asked the question that would prove what she was afraid of. How do you know so much about me? How do you know that I was so shy before? He turned his head towards the girl. I know you because the day before I was put to death, you told me you would change and become the strongest kunoichi in your village. You also told me you would always love me. Does that sound familiar? Asked Acnologia. It did ring some bells. Hinata moved back a few steps before putting her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were big and filled with tears. Kurama was both shocked and sad when he looked at Acnologia. And Naruto-kun? She asked. Minato and Kushina turned their heads quickly back and forth between the girl and the dragon. Hinata, what did you say? Minato shakingly asked. He hoped he had misunderstood. His wife was shaking, too, and she hoped it was all a dream. Hinata didn't look at them, but instead kept her attention on Acnologia. Again, she asked, "Are you Naruto-kun?" Acnologia just sighed and turned back to look at her. "Yes, I am Acnologia, the Dragon King, the Black Dragon of the Apocalypse. But when I was human and a shinobi, I was known as Naruto Uzumaki, the last Jinchuriki of Kurama, the Kyuubi no Yoko." The people inside just stared at him in shock, sadness and fear. Minato and Kushina are the last two. Hinata had to take a few steps to get in front of him. She puts her hand slowly on his nose and rubs it with care. "Naruto-kun," she said in a soft voice. Acnologia would never admit it, but he liked how soft the girl's hands were on him. They were so comforting and warm. It made him think of Anna and the rest. He chose to be friendly with her. Hinata stopped and took a step back when Acnologia's body began to glow brightly. Everyone was shocked when he kept getting smaller and his features kept changing until they looked more human. He kept getting smaller and smaller until he was about the same height as Hinata, or even a little bit taller. After the light went out, what they saw threw them for a new loop. Where Acnologia used to stand, there was now a man with a clear face and a chiseled chest that was covered with scars. His arms and torso were also covered with scars. His only clothes were a black cloak and black baggy trousers. He was wearing a necklace of fangs. He had blonde hair that was spiky like Minato's. He had narrow eyes that were the darkest blue anyone had ever seen. The 3 whisker marks on each of his cheeks stood out the most. It was Naruto Uzumaki. A much older Naruto Uzumaki. The man looked at the girl in front of him and then slowly put his hand on her cheek. This scared the girl, so she didn't let him warm her up until she calmed down. "I have missed you, Hinata," he said in a soft voice. Hinata's eyes started to tear up, and she started crying before she hugged him. This shocked him, and he gave the hug back slowly and with some reluctance. "Naruto-kun, sob Naruto-kun, sob Naruto-kun, sob. You're back. Sob I thought I'd never see you again. Sob I missed you so much." Naruto just gave the girl a hug and let her tell him everything. He wanted to have fun at this get-together. Because he was happy and at peace for the first time in a long time. Naruto seemed to hold on to Hinata for hours, but he didn't mind at all. He wanted the girl to tell him everything she was feeling. Plus, he liked the way she made him feel warm. It was very seductive. It felt like sitting by a big fireplace. It was warm and made me feel good. It was an incredible feeling. And her scent. Kami, her smell was out of this world. It made him think of honey and lavender mixed together. The two fit together so well that his nose thought it was in heaven. How much more attractive could this girl be to him? She was absolutely perfect in every way. She is beautiful on the inside and out, has a strong will, and doesn't show any bad feelings unless you're her enemy. She was a god, no question about it. Once upon a time, Anna and Irene were gods to him, too. When he wakes up from his daydream, he looks down and sees that the girl has stopped crying and is just softly sobbing. He can hear her say something, but he can't make out what it is. When he looks at the other people in the room, he sees that Kurama is watching the scene with a smile on his face. Naruto couldn't help but want to roll his eyes. He was still the same. He was still the same arrogant, sneaky jerk as before. When he looked at the other 2 people in the car, he saw that his parents were shocked by what they were seeing. His mother was shaking and had her hands over her mouth. His father couldn't say or do anything because he was too shocked. He decided he needed to talk to the other people in the room, so he looked down at the girl, cupped her face in his hands, and brought it up so she could see Naruto. Before he spoke, they looked at each other for a while. "Hinata." "Yes, Naruto-kun?" she said in a quiet voice. Hinata nodded. "This reunion is heartwarming and very welcome, but we need to figure out how we got here." Naruto used his thumbs to wipe away the last of her tears before he and Hinata walked towards the other 3. Naruto walked slowly towards the other people in the room. Minato and Kushina, on the other hand, were a nervous mess. No one knew how they got here. They were in the afterlife 1 minute, and then there was a flash of light and they were here with Hinata and the Kyuubi in this white void. They were about to say that the Kyuubi were to blame, but Hinata quickly stopped them by saying that the Kyuubi had nothing to do with them being teleported here. Then, all of a sudden, the black dragon shows up, and the couple finds out it's their son. How? Why did their son turn into a dragon? What really matters is what happened to him and how he is related to Hinata. Not only that, but they didn't know why they thought their son hated them. When they thought about it, it made them feel sick. What was wrong with their son? As the boy. No, make that man they had been talking about came closer, they wondered what he would say or do to them. Will he hug them or hurt them? But Naruto didn't do either of those things. Naruto walks right by them without even looking at them, and he keeps going until he is right below the Kyuubi. It's nice to see you again, Kurama. It's been a long time, Kurama says with a smile. Yes, I guess it's been a long time for you. It's been between 8 and 9 years for me, but I'm glad to see your ugly face again, Kit. I see that death hasn't stopped you from talking smart, Yubaka Kitsune, but I still miss you. Kurama snorted. Compared to your vixen, our reunion isn't that great. Oh, and how did your vixen feel? You got to see her assets up close. How was that? Hinata was red as a bee after the Kyuubi asked Naruto that question. Naruto's answer just made it worse. They were soft, warm, and comforting. Overall, it was the best feeling I've had in a long time. At this point, Hinata's face was turning atomic red, and she covered it with her hands as steam came out of her head. Kurama snorted and then laughed like a crazy person. His laughter could be heard all over the empty space. Ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Man, I really do miss these conversations with your kit. You always made them fun. There was never a dull moment with you. Naruto smiled and said, I wouldn't be me if I wasn't unpredictable. Then, Kurama's face turned serious, and he looked at Minato and Kushina, then back down at Naruto. Outside of all the fun and games, Naruto, I think you need to settle some things, and now seems like a good time. Naruto groaned. He was sure he was correct. No matter how much he tried to avoid it, he couldn't. It was time to put an end to this part of his past. He nodded, then turned around and walked to the two places in his past that were important to him. His parents. The same ones who thought it was a good idea to seal the Kurama in him and leave him with the most careless adults in a village that wanted his blood to watch over him. They kept trying to get her blood for almost 13 years. Many times, they came close to killing him, but Kurama saved him each time. Then there was the Sandaime Hokage, who didn't do anything to help him. He just sent the mobs that were after him to I&T, but they always got out and started looking for him again. All because the old man was helpless against the councils of civilians and shinobi. The leaders of the clans were just as useless. Don't even get him started on Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Tsunade. It's better to say less. He stops thinking about what he was going to say because he was about a meter away from them when he stopped. He keeps staring at them with the most blank look anyone, human or dragon, could make. He was so still looking that Minato and Kushina were even more worried. Hello, Minato and Kushina. You look healthy for two dead people. Minato and Kushina were startled by their son's dull, bland voice. Minato took a deep breath before he looked into Naruto's cold, blank eyes. Naruto, do you recognize us? How would I not know the great Yondaime Hokage? He killed the Kyuubi and saved Konoha. His wife is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. You are like gods to the people of Konoha. Why wouldn't I know who you are? Naruto asked incredulously. Naruto, I meant. I know what you meant, Yondaime, says Naruto, stopping him from going on. So, you know? That you are the parents who ruined my life and left me for dead in Konoha. Yes, I know exactly who you are. The two were startled by his cold tone, but they didn't understand what he meant. Naruto, what do you mean we ruined your life? I mean, I know having the Kyuubi in you was bad, but you had Sarutobi, Kakashi, Jiraiya, who we made your godfather, and the good people of Konoha to look after you. Minato smiled, wondering what he learns from everyone. Don't forget about Tsunade Tt Ebane, Kushina shouts. But their good mood went down when they felt a huge key coming at them. They looked to see that Naruto was giving them a mean look. The whites of his eyes were glowing, which made him look very scary. Kurama and Hinata jerked when they saw the bomb that the two of them had set off. Naruto stared for a long time before he said something in a cold whisper. Not that bad? Looked after? Good people of Konoha? His voice was getting much louder and angrier. At this point, he raised his voice and said, you stupid, naive, idealistic, idiots. Now, he was yelling at them. You have the nerve to say to my face? While smiling no else. What fucking village were you living in? And to answer your question, no. I was not well looked after. The moment after you sealed Kurama within me, I had people screaming for my death. Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Tsunade, as you well put it, did nothing for me. The Sandaime was even worse. He gave into that console like a submissive bitch. I was forced to live in an orphanage until I was 4 years old. I lived on the streets for almost 4 years. I was put in an apartment building in the red light district of Konoha. The people there treated me better than the rest of the village. I have been beaten, tortured, stabbed, electrocuted, burned, drowned, and raped by the very people who were supposed to protect me. By the time Naruto was done, he was so out of breath that he was wheezing. He had been keeping all of his anger inside for a long time, but when he heard them talking trash, he just let it all out. Still, letting out all of his anger felt good. Plus, he enjoyed breaking their innocent, perfect views of their favorite village. He was a very screwed up person, that much is certain. Now, if they didn't believe him, he'll kill them and use Hinata and Kurama to get out of here. But since they were ghosts, could he kill them? Maybe his magic will put that idea to the test. It's one thing for him to take souls from the living, but he's never tried it on the dead. He stops thinking when he feels a hand on his shoulder. When he looks up, he sees Hinata looking worriedly at him. He gives her a little nod to show that he's okay. Yo. Ing, says a soft voice. With their better hearing, Naruto and Kurama heard it right away. Naruto let out an annoyed sigh and then looked at the two of them. He saw that they both had their heads down and their bodies were shaking. Excuse me, human, but do you want to say that again? Naruto asked his human father. Minato looks up. Minato yelled, "You're lying. There's no way that happened to you. Konoha is one of the best villages in the elemental nations. Konoha would not do those things to you." Kushina looked like she had just lost everything and was hoping that everything she heard was a lie. That can't be right. People in Konoha liked him and his wife, so they would probably also like their son. They would surely see Naruto as their savior and protector, not the fox that was sealed inside him. Even if they hadn't, Sandaime, Jiraiya, and Kakashi would have kept an eye on him anyway. They promised that the boy would grow up to be a great ninja and have a happy childhood. The people they trusted and put their lives on the line for wouldn't just abandon them and their son, right? Naruto shook with anger and palmed his face with both hands. He slowly lets go of his parents' hands. Hinata and Kurama were scared and took a few steps back. Naruto's eyes were completely white and had a pale glow that made them shine brightly. But before anyone could do anything, Naruto walked up to them and looked at them with a mean grin. A smile that meant trouble was coming. Naruto hit Minato in the gut with a quick uppercut before he had a chance to move. Yondaime's lungs stopped taking in air as he felt his muscles and organs twisting from the force of the punch. Naruto's smile got bigger when he heard the sounds of muscles and organs being twisted and squeezed so hard that they were almost coming apart. It sounded good to the Dragon King. And oh boy. It was even more fun for Naruto to do it to his human father, which is a term he uses very loosely. As Minato fell back a few feet, he coughed up blood and spit. He coughed up a lot of mucus and held his stomach in pain. Minato didn't have much time to think about how hurt he was, though, because Naruto showed up right in front of him. Kushina lunged at Naruto to try to stop him, but the blonde king just disappeared in a blur and put a vicious vice grip on Kushina's throat to lift her into the air. Kushina. Minato croaked. Naruto laughed as he slammed Kushina hard into the ground, making her grunt in pain. Minato tried to get up, but his son gave him a quick kick that knocked him back down. Minato grunted in pain, and he and Kushina both looked up to see their son making a series of hand movements that looked like hand signs. All of a sudden, a seal showed up in each of their bellies. Minato and Kushina were scared because they could no longer feel their chakra. They couldn't even move a finger. What was going on? Minato coughed. "What have you done to us?" Naruto smirked. Naruto lifted Minato by the collar of his shirt and said, "I just added a seal that seals away your chakra and makes you immobile, so you can't run away." Minato was scared and about to say something, but he choked on his words when he got a hard punch in the gut. "Stop talking and take it like a man," Naruto said with a sneer as he raised his arm back in. Naruto hit Minato over and over with his fists. He could hear his ribs breaking and damage being done to his organs. The cuts and blood on his face were getting worse. He coughed up chunks of blood as he was hit over and over again. Kushina was horrified to see her son brutally beat her husband. Naruto finally stopped when he saw that the Yondaime was a bloody mess. He thought it was time to finish. As he fell next to his wife, he threw the hurt Yondaime to the side. Kushina asked if he was right, but all Minato could do was groan. Naruto walked right in front of them, cutting off anything Kushina was going to say. He lifted his arm, and as his magical energy flowed into his palm, a very familiar sphere formed. This is the Rasengan. But Naruto kept pouring his mana into the sphere as it grew, until it was as big as a beach ball 10 feet in diameter. Kushina begged Naruto, "Naruto, please." But Naruto just gave her a blank look. "Farewell, Kushina Uzumaki. Minato Namikaze. Go back to the afterlife knowing that you failed your son." Naruto was about to fire the Rasengan when a hand stopped him. Naruto turned around to see who had stopped him and growled in anger. His glare went away as he looked blankly back at Hinata's lavender eyes. He only asked, "Why?" Hinata kept looking at her crush, boyfriend, or husband with a sad look on her face. She quickly looked at Kushina and Minato. When she saw how scared they looked, her frown got even worse. She quickly turned around to see Naruto just staring at her. Hinata finally said, "That's enough. Don't keep doing this." Naruto's eyes got very angry, but before he could say anything, Hinata went on. She started slowly, "Naruto. I understand you are angry. I get it. Kurama gets it. You've bottled up all your anger and hatred for Konoha and your parents for so long, and I can tell you have been through much in this world. And after hearing what your parents said, you finally just snapped and vented it out on them. I understand, Naruto. But I can't allow you to continue. I will not allow you to get consumed by your anger and hatred and make a mistake that you will regret." Naruto was going to say something, but Hinata stopped him. "No, I'm not done, so you will listen to me, Naruto. Right now, we have more important things to worry about, like figuring out who brought us here. So I need you to calm down and not let your anger take over. This is not you. You are not the masked Uchiha and you are nothing like Sasuke. So prove right now that you are not a Uchiha and just work with them until this is over. You don't have to like them or forgive." Naruto couldn't decide whether to growl in anger or laugh out of amusement. Hinata had changed a lot since the last time he had seen her, which made her even more appealing to take now. Only when they were together did she talk even a little like she does now. Even though it was short, it was one of his best times. Even though he wanted to argue, he knew she was right. Even though he hates his parents, killing them won't help him. To figure out how they got here, they had to work together. Before he got rid of the Rasengan and his eyes went back to normal, he let out a sigh. The others let out a sigh of relief, but Minato and Kushina stood out more. When they saw Naruto staring at them, the two of them jerked back. The three of them were very quiet until Naruto raised his arm. This made the other two jump, but when he flicked his wrists, the seals on their bodies went away. Naruto flicked his arm again, and Minato's body began to glow as all of his wounds went away. Both of them stood up and looked up at Naruto with confusion on their faces. Don't get the wrong idea. I did it because if we want to find out who brought us here, we need to be in top shape, and having you beat up and bloody, while funny to me, would be nothing but a hindrance. The two flinched but nodded. Naruto looked at Hinata, who smiled proudly at him. Now, Naruto, who do you know who could have brought us all here? She asked. Maybe we can help you with that, young lady, a voice said. The people inside turned to see where the voice was coming from and were shocked to see who it was. Two people walked up to them. Both of these things were the same size as Kurama and were dragons, just like Naruto was when he first came out of the White Void. The scales on the top half of the first one's body were aquamarine, while the scales on the bottom half were gray. His wings were like bats, which is how most dragons are shown, and the same color as his skin. His eyes were the same light blue as the sky on a sunny summer day. He had a white, flowing beard that was tied with a golden band that went down his chin. He also had 4 horns on his head, 2 on the top of his head and 2 on his sides that were golden at the tips and pointed outwards and inwards, respectively. His forehead was covered by a white unibrow that went up to his hair. He wore 2 golden plates on his shoulders that were connected by a chain at the front of his body. A big blue gem was at the end of the chain. Past the plates was a long, dark blue cloak that reached the end of his tail and had 2 golden bands like his beard. He also had 2 brown bags with books and scrolls in them on each side of him. Naruto was surprised by the first dragon, but the second one shocked him the most and made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. The second person to live there was a dragon that was all black, like Naruto, but his underbelly was a much darker shade of gray. He had claws and talons on his 4 fingers. His wings were also shaped like bat wings, and the black skin on them was see-through. His head had 2 horns, and his chin had 4. He had brown eyes with black lines across the middle. He also had horns that looked like bones and went from his head down his spine to the end of his axe-shaped tail. The most noticeable part of this dragon's outfit was the silver necklace he wore around his neck. The middle of the necklace seemed to have a hole for a jewel. When Naruto saw who was in front of him, he was scared. Hinata looked at him with worry because he seemed scared right now. She taps him on the cheek, which brings him out of his trance and makes him look at her in fear, which makes her worry even more. Hinata begged, "What's wrong, Naruto-kun? You look so shocked and scared. Please tell me." Naruto didn't say anything, but when one of the dragons coughed, it got their attention. The blue one said with a smile, "I think we might be able to figure out why Naruto is so nervous in front of us." Hinata was worried as she looked at them, and Kurama looked like he was ready to fight if he had to. When the girl asked who they are, the blue one's smiles got bigger. "You see, young Hinata, I am known as the Chronicler, one of the elder dragons. I am the watcher of all dragons. I have written down the history of dragons from when they were young to where they are now. My fellow Draconian is Thorin, the Dragon of Energy, the 6th Dragon King, and Naruto's or should I say Acnologia's predecessor and surrogate father, the same father he killed with his own hands." The room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Kurama and Hinata were shocked as they looked back and forth between the dragons and Naruto. Naruto killed his surrogate father, right? Why, then? Why would he do something like that to the being who probably raised him like a son? Power? Revenge? None of those fit with what Naruto thought or believed. But they didn't know how long it had been since Naruto was put to death. So it's possible that he became a much more bitter and angry person than he used to be. But when they saw how the blonde was changing into the 2 dragons, they knew she was telling the truth. In plain English, Naruto was trembling like a scared rabbit. They could tell that Naruto was scared to even talk to the former Dragon King, much less be in the same room with him. When people talked about Naruto, that blonde couldn't look Thorin in the eye. During the Dragon Civil War, he did things that made Thorin's great gift to him look bad. He spat on his last hopes and ideals. So, at the moment, he couldn't look at Thorin straight in the eyes because he felt ashamed. From his point of view, he shouldn't be king. None of the dragons came after him to steal the crown, though. Was it because he was the strongest or because the crystal still thought he was worthy? But still, why? He had done nothing to deserve that title or the perks that came with it. All he did was make it almost impossible for dragons to live. In fact, for the past 400 years, all he has done is destroy a huge number of empires and societies. Even though many people were ruled by cruel men or were Zeref's followers, he killed everything, not just the king. He killed every single man, woman, and child. Literally, it was genocide. He brought death, destruction, and obliteration to everything and everyone in his line of sight. All of this was done to fill the empty space that hadn't gone away in 400 years. When a black claw touched his chin and lifted his head, it stopped the blonde from thinking. He looked at Thorin straight in the eyes. He thought Thorin would be angry or upset, but he didn't expect him to have a kind face. He just smiled when Naruto looked confused. "It's been a long time, my son. You've grown up to be a beautiful dragon, Naruto." Naruto's eyes grew wide and he just stared as he pushed the claw away and looked at Thorin in pain and confusion. "How can you say that to me? How can you say all of that after everything I've done? I killed you. I killed countless of my brethren in cold blood. Hell, part of me enjoyed it as I watched their lives being taken away as their eyes lost their light and they fell into the cold earth. For dragon's sake, I drank and bathed in their blood and ate some of their bodies and organs? How can you still look at me with such love?" And by the time he was done, Naruto was on his knees, crying and shaking. He couldn't understand why his father still loved him after everything he had done to him, to their people, and to his legacy. Hinata couldn't stand to see her beloved look so broken. The last time she had seen him like this was right before he was put to death. She ran to him and tried to comfort him, even though he protested. Kurama looked at the scene with a sad face. He knew what it was like to have failed a father and killed thousands of people for years. It was like Naruto and he were mirror images of each other. It made him sad to think that someone he came to care about like a son ended up like he did. Back with Naruto, he kept crying while Hinata held him as tightly as she could and whispered comforting words. He didn't deserve such kindness from such a kind woman. She was light personified, while he was darkness at its worst. Yet he held her as tightly as he could, as if she were his lifeline. He told Naruto, "Look at me," and Naruto did as he said. It was sad what happened 400 years ago. A terrible tragedy, to be sure. But both sides had to do it because of how the war was going. No matter what you or anyone else did, there would have been someone just like you in the end, and the same thing would have happened. No dragon holds you responsible for what happened. Not me. None of the other dragons or the chronicler or the elementals. Did you ever ask yourself why neither they nor any of our allies did anything to stop you? Because they felt like they were partly to blame for what happened to you, they decided to leave you alone to deal with your grief and told the other dragons to hide. Now that you've calmed down enough, the chronicler and his father decided to set up this meeting and give you something. What do they want to give Naruto-kun? Hinata wanted him. Thorin smiled at the girl and then ran one of his claws along her cheek. So you're the well-known Hinata. Naruto would talk about you all the time for a long time. I have to say that you are as beautiful as he said. He would talk about you all the time, and most of the time he would call you his Lavender Queen or Moon Goddess. When your daughter asked him about you, he talked about you a lot. I'm happy I got to meet my son's first mate. Thorin's words made Hinata's face turn bright red. Beautiful? Moon Goddess? Lavender Queen? How can Naruto make her fall in love with him with such simple words? They've only known each other for a few years, but he can make her fall in love with him so easily. She looked at Naruto and saw his eyes. She saw that he meant every word and that they were still true to him even now. What do you mean, Thorin Otou-sama? We don't have any children. Thorin, Naruto, and Kurama all smiled when they heard his name. Have you forgotten the time you spent with Naruto before he was killed? Hinata turned a deep red color again and nodded as she thought about the time she had spent with her beloved. Why yes. What about this deal? She queried. Before that, I think there are some people who should know about what's going on. Naruto, right? This time, the chronicler spoke. Naruto nodded, stood up, and walked back to Kurama, his parents, and Kurama's parents. He looked at them seriously, while they were nervous but kept their cool. I'm about to tell you about my life up until the day I was killed. I have no reason to lie to either of you, so you can be sure that what I'm saying is the truth. After he said, I swear a blood oath to the dragons that I will show you the truth, lightning exploded in the void, confusing everyone except the dragons and Naruto. The chronicler decided to explain what it meant. A blood oath to the dragons is a sacred promise that a being swears to keep and do what they promised to do. If they didn't, the person who broke that solemn oath would have to suffer for all time. Everyone was shocked when they saw Naruto. Would he really go that far to prove he was telling the truth? Then again, it was typical of him to do something so crazy. Naruto then closed his eyes. Byakugan. Hinata looked at him with confusion when he said, when he opened his eyes, they were glowing a pale white. I called it Byakugan because of the way my eyes looked and because some of their powers are the same as yours. Also, it was my way of showing you respect. It made me feel like I always had a little bit of you with me. Hinata looked like she was the happiest woman in the world, so he smiled and gave her a big, wet French kiss. The kiss lasted a few minutes and involved a lot of tongue movement until Naruto had a chance to catch his breath. He saw that Hinata's face was red and her eyes were full of lust, but only for him. He knew he had the same look on him. The dragons and Fox just laughed at the show. Minato and Kushina were embarrassed by the show of affection, since that should only happen in the bedroom. Naruto turned his attention back to his parents. Remembering the past. He yelled, and a huge white screen popped up above his head. The screen lit up. He showed Konoha after Kurama's attack and being sealed inside Naruto. It looked like a scene from a horror movie. There was fire everywhere, and bodies of the dead were all over the place. Buildings were crushed and destroyed, and many areas were left empty. Sometimes only a person's limbs were left. The scene changed to the council room when Sandaime took over after his successor died and told everyone about Naruto. The scene changed to Naruto having a terrible time in the orphanage. He was given worn-out clothes and hardly any blankets to keep him warm. The other kids and caretakers abused and bullied the child for the years he was there. When he was 4, he was thrown out onto the streets in a blizzard. He would have died from hyperthermia and frostbite if the fox hadn't used his chakra to keep Naruto warm. After being beaten on his birthday, he was given a rundown apartment. It was there that he met the kind people of Ichiraku Ramen, who always gave him a bowl of food. It soon became his favorite place to eat and hang out. But that didn't stop the many people who tried to kill him. He was beaten and abused in the worst ways a person could treat a child. When he was 8, he was taken by a group of villagers and after his rescue, Naruto was an empty husk. He didn't care about anyone or anything. He was tired of the pain and suffering, so he took a knife in his home and stabbed himself in the heart. He fell to the floor as he was drowning in his own blood, but the fox saved him and took him to the hospital to help him heal faster. He tried to kill himself for months after his release, but he always failed. He went to the academy to become a ninja, but his teachers did everything they could to stop him from learning. Naruto decided to play pranks to get back at them and show his hatred to the village. It was a good lesson in stealth, and he managed to outrun the Chunin, Jonin, and even Anbu chasing him for hours. These copies were self-aware and could think for themselves, but they usually did the same things as the original. The most important thing was that anything they learned or experienced went back to the original user when they disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Then came his first mission outside of the village, which took him from a simple C rank to an A rank. It was during this mission that he learned what his ninja way would be and how he would live in the shinobi world. Then came the chance to move up in ninja rank, the Chunin exams, which were made up of 3 parts. The first was a written test, which went smoothly. The second was a survival exam in the Forest of Death. Naruto and Sasuke win their first matches. Sakura's fight ends in a draw. Naruto then makes it his mission to beat Neji for nearly killing Hinata in their first match. Naruto and the others had 1 month to train before the 3rd round. Then, during the last round, Orochimaru starts the invasion he and another village, Suna, had been planning. Naruto ends up fighting Gaara, who had Kurama's youngest brother, Shukaku, inside him but was going crazy because of the faulty seal that made him sleepless. Naruto was able to change Gaara's mind, but many people died because of the invasion, including the Sandame. Naruto and Jiraiya go to find Tsunade. Naruto finds out that she is a drunken mess because she lost her family in the last war and is a compulsive gambler with bad luck. He is able to get her out of her drunken mess and convince her to go back to the village, but not before Tsunade and Jiraiya fight Orochimaru and his assistant Kabuto in a battle royale. After they went back to Konoha and Tsunade became the Godam Hokage, Naruto helped a powerful lord in the land of tea and saved an actress who turned out to be a princess of spring, snow country. However, everything went downhill when Sasuke tried to leave for Orochimaru to get more power so that he could kill his brother. Naruto and a team of his friends were chosen to go after him. In the end, it was a fight between Naruto and Sasuke at the Valley of the End. Naruto managed to take the win thanks to Kurama's chakra. He dragged Sasuke back hoping for some recognition at long last. Nope. Not even fucking close. Immediately the council said he had used excessive force to bring back the Uchiha and needed to be put down. They threw him in jail and told him that his execution would be held in a week. No one came to see him or even allowed to see him. Not his friends. Not his teachers. No Iruka. No Jiraiya. No Tsunade. No one. The last time he saw them was when he was dragged into the prison. All of his friends calling him a traitor and a monster. Apparently the council blew the lid on his secret and now everyone knew he was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and hated him for it. His closest people, Iruka, Tsunade, and Jiraiya did nothing for him and watched in silence as he was taken away. In his time alone, he realized how foolish it was to try to change the village. This is when Hinata came to see him and cried as she told him she loved him. She found a way into the prison and had one night of beautiful, passionate love with him, which made Minato, Kushina, and Hinata blush. Kurama gives Naruto one thing to remember Hinata by and gives him his power since he has been the only one who can use it. On the day of his execution, everyone in the village except Hinata and the Ichirakus came out to watch. Naruto was killed by being set on fire, but instead of screaming, he laughed. A bone-chilling laugh that filled the air and scared the crap out of everyone. He then told them about his family and why Kurama attacked the village before dying and leaving his old world for a new one. When the screen went away, Naruto's eyes went back to normal. He was a little out of breath because he had been using his eyes so much for so long. It had been a long time since he had gone that long with a memory projection. He knew he was very out of shape and needed to do something about it. He looks up and sees Hinata as worried, but he brushes it off. He looks at his parents and sees that they are kinda broken. Both of them were crying, pounding their fists on the ground, cursing everyone, and wishing that Kurama would just destroy the village if this was what was in store for their son. They cursed the Uchiha who let Kurama out and turned him against the village. They cursed Sasuke for being the last thing that killed Naruto. They cursed Tsunade, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and the Sandaime for not helping or taking care of their son enough. They cursed the whole village and, most of all, themselves because they had cursed their son. They were wrong to think that everyone would love their son and think of him as a hero. What a bunch of fuckwits they were. Their stupid, naive idealism cost their son his childhood and his life. Why? Was the question that kept coming up in their minds. Why didn't the people they put their lives in the hands of help their own family members? Did they just act like they cared and then show Naruto who they really were? Was this really the reason why they died? They saved their village so that their son could be beaten to death. To turn into a monster worse than the Kyuubi? When Naruto spoke, he stopped them from thinking. I've told you the truth about how I was raised, and now it's time for me to say something that I've been meaning to say for a long time. You too have caused me a lot of pain in my life. Whether you did it on purpose or not, you made my childhood a living hell. But I should thank you for giving me a father and mother in Kurama and Thorin, and Saphira, Thorin's queen. Minato flinches. Their whole worlds fell apart. Their own son doesn't see them as his parents. In fact, he sees two dragons in the Kyuubi as his parents more than he does the two of them. They couldn't blame him, though. They failed as parents. All they gave him was a burden he was too young to understand or bear, and left him with people who turned their backs on him, didn't want him around, or wanted him dead. We messed up so badly, they thought as they cried again for the new hurt in their hearts. The two felt a pair of arms wrap around them. They looked up to see Hinata's sympathetic gaze. The two buried their heads on her shoulders as they continued to cry. Hinata couldn't get Naruto to stop being angry at his parents, even when they were together. It seems that Naruto's time on Earthland wasn't always good to him, and all it seemed to do was bury all his hatred until it all came out today. She knew she didn't have the right to tell Naruto who he should think of as his parents. She just hopes that with time, Naruto will learn to forgive his parents after letting all that anger, rage. Naruto turned to his teacher, father, and said, Naruto, I think you and the other two should listen to what Hinata had to say about the elemental nations after your sudden death. After Minato and Kushina had calmed down enough to listen, Naruto turned to the girl in question and everyone else in the room. She sighed before telling her story. After you were killed, things went from bad to worse in Konoha. When people heard that the only son of the Yondaime had been abused and killed by the village, they were not happy. Because of it, the village was split in two. Those who felt bad, which Naruto thought was a bit late, and those who didn't care. Gaara, who was the Kazekage, Koyuki, who was the spring daimyo, Shibuki, who was the waterfall leader, and Jirocho, who was the land of tea leader, all cut all ties with Konoha. They were all disgusted by your childhood and the fact that you were killed for doing your job. After getting so many angry letters from all the countries that broke their treaty with us, the fire daimyo had to march down to the village. He really let them all have it as he told them how stupid they were. The civilian council was thrown out, and all of its members were killed and their property was taken away. The leaders of the clans had to pay a big fine that took away half of their income. The shinobi elders were sent to a maximum security prison. Danzo tried to fight back, thinking this was his chance to take over, but Jiraiya and Tsunade killed him after a long battle. After that, his root Anbu went on the attack against the village. It turned into a bloody battle where no one knew who to trust. The fire daimyo wanted to know why Danzo wasn't watched more closely if he was such a suspicious person, but Tsunade could only make excuses, which made the fire daimyo even more angry. He took away almost all of the Hokage's power and turned her into a figurehead. Now, he was pretty much in charge of everything. All of our old friends refused to believe what had happened, and many of them blamed you for all the damage to the village. Shikamaru, Choji, Lee, Tenten, and Shino were the only ones who looked sorry, which, Naruto thought, was a little bit for that. Sasuke was still in a coma that was made by doctors so that they could keep an eye on him. Because of what he did to you, I decided to fuck him over. I added some things to the medicine he was getting injected that slowly stopped him from being able to make sperm. Most of the time, the drugs he was given made him sleepy, so no one knew what was going on with him until it was too late. When he woke up, his testicles looked like a dry desert. Naruto was shocked and stared at Hinata. "You mean you," she said with a smirk. "Yes, I really did make that weak Uchiha the last one in every way. Well, the last one except for Itachi and that jerk in a mask who said he was Madara. Even worse, I gave him an injection of special enzymes that permanently loosened the muscles in his genitalia, making it impossible for him to get an erection again. That jerk should never have kids or sex again. Thought I was saving any poor girl or guy who was stuck with him from a life of disappointment. He really lived up to the name, Runt of the Uchiha." Naruto couldn't help but laugh out loud, and soon everyone else did too. Kurama was rolling on the floor and his sides hurt from all the laughing. "Take that Uchiha Teme." They all thought at once, and Hinata laughed before she went on. "I chose to go to Shizune to learn about medicine from her as her apprentice. She told me I should go to Tsunade, but I told her I didn't want anything to do with that useless woman. Plus, she was going to teach Sakura and Ino, and I didn't want anything to do with them either. She finally agreed to teach me about poisons and medical ninjutsu. Anko helped her a little bit. Tsunade. After you died, she changed. I think it was the last thing she could do to fight back. I think the only reason she took Sakura and Ino as apprentices was so she wouldn't have to keep reminding herself that she failed you. With my Byakugan and almost perfect control of my chakra, I did very well in the medical arts. Then I learned how to control the elements. Shizune was surprised that I had an affinity for both water and wind when she tested my affinity. This finally told me why I wasn't good for Juken the way it was right now. The Juken was made for people who were drawn to earth. It needed someone who was as steady and strong as a rock. But my personality demanded that I be quick, flexible, and able to change. I decided to make my own style of Juken that combined my two strengths into a whole new way to fight with the Byakugan. Elders of the Hyuga clan called me to the clan dojo one day. They wanted to see how good Hanabi was again by putting me up against her. I thought it would be funny to go along with it for a while, so I did. Hanabi tried to break my will by telling me how weak I was and that she could have been a better wife for a fool like me. That made me lose my temper and forget any plans I had to be calm. I ran right up to her and knocked her off her feet. I then punched her until she was a bloody mess on the ground. The whole clan was shocked, and some of the elders tried to help, but I knocked them down with some powerful, but deadly blows to the groin. Hiyashi was scared after I did what I did. He would have told me to get off the ground, but my look stopped him. I told him that he and the rest of this disgusting family could stop talking nonsense. I told them that Shy Hinata had died and would never be seen again. They wanted me to be a Hyuga with a cold heart, and I was going to give them what they wanted. Neji said I was still weak like the demon, so I turned on the seal on his forehead. The jerk screamed for a few minutes until I got tired of it and stopped. I told him that if he insulted me again, I wouldn't stop until he was dead on the floor, and I told the others the same thing if they ever did it again. They never got in my way again after that. Everyone in the house was scared of me. Shizune wanted me to sign the slug contract after a whole year, but I told her I had another plan for a summoning contract. After that, we went to where Uzushiogakure used to be. Like Kurama said, I was able to get in because your blood was in my body after we got married, and that's how I found the contract to the Phoenix. We didn't tell anyone, and I worked on learning the super strength technique that Tsunade had made, as well as learning elemental mastery and senjutsu from my summons. Anko even suggested that I take kenjutsu lessons from a friend. This kept going on for about 7 more years. I became the most powerful person in my age group by the time I was 20. In 3 years, I had learned how to use my Sage mode, and I was stronger than both Jiraiya and Tsunade put together. Shizune and Tsunade became less close to each other over time. As usual, Shizune tried to be there, but Tsunade just shut her and everyone else out. Even with Sakura and Ino, she never tried to get close to them and always kept their relationship on a professional level. After they were done with training, she only talked to them when she sent them on missions or gave them jobs in the hospital. Tsunade was a shell of the person she used to be. She was worse than she was when you first found her. This time, no one could get close unless the village was in danger or there was something going on at the hospital. No matter how hard Jiraiya and Shizune tried, nothing worked. The person they knew as Tsunade Senju was gone, and she wasn't coming back. Then, in the last battle of Oto's second invasion, I fought Sasuke, who had gone back to Orochimaru a few years before. This time, Iwa and Kumo helped Oto. He said the same nonsense he had said before. He talked about killing every Konoha and then going after his brother before he could bring back his clan. He said that he was going to make me one of his wives so that you would always be with him in the afterlife. The little jerk didn't give me much trouble because he thought I wasn't as strong as I was. His curse mark form was hard to deal with, but my Sage Mode and Elemental Jukin made it easy. I ended up beating the little jerk to the ground before I used my extra strength to smash his face into a million pieces. Orochimaru, the Sandaime Tsuchikage, and the Yondaime Raikage fought Jiraiya, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Guy. Towards the end of the invasion, I fought against their Jinchuriki. Even in Sage Mode, I was being pushed to my limits, but then I unlocked this purple chakra. This is Hamura Otsutsuki's chakra. It merged with my Sage Mode and changed the way my eyes looked. The Tenseigan came from them. It gave me the boost I needed so badly. I used my new power to fight off their Biju forms, and I was able to free the tailed beasts and send them back to the summoning realm. But before they left, I took a sample of their chakras for the last part of the plan we had made. The cages of the enemy alliance were angry that the Biju were let out of their ships, which killed 4 Jinchuriki. They had to go back because they didn't have their Biju, but they were not done yet. They hired the Akatsuki to help them get back at me by destroying the leaf. Itachi wanted my head because I had killed Sasuke. The leaf knew it wouldn't be easy to win the war, but it was able to get Suna, Taka, Spring, and Kiri to join its side. Even better, the daimyo sent a whole army of his best samurai. Then, about 6 months later, there was a third invasion, which gave me some time to learn how to use my new powers. The fight between the two sides was violent and bloody. At the same time, I fought Itachi, Pain, and Konan. I was almost out of energy by the time I killed Konan and Itachi, but I did it. Pain saw this and would have killed me if Shizune hadn't jumped in and taken the blow for me. I lost it when I saw my master die in front of me. My chakra levels went through the roof. I started taking in chakra from everywhere, including the Bijus I had collected over the years. I did what you and Kurama had wanted. I got white hair and horns on the sides of my head, but the most important thing was that I got a third eye on my forehead. This is the Rinne Sharingan. Kurama was right. I was Kaguya Otsutsuki's reincarnation, or, to be more precise, I was Kaguya Otsutsuki's atavism. I literally had the power of the most powerful chakra. Pain had no chance against me, and after a long fight, I beat him. I broke his eyes so that they could never be used again. I showed up over the leaders of the enemy, and everyone was shocked to see me. The enemy cages wouldn't stop fighting, so they told Madara to move. Madara showed up wearing the same clothes he wore when he tried to steal Kurama. The same disgusting orange mask made me very angry. He used the Edo Tensei to bring back the old Jinchuriki and a whole army of legendary shinobi. Some of these people were the 7 swordsmen of the mist, bloodline wielders, my mother, Shizune, and the Uchiha clan. He tried to bring you back to life, but it didn't work. He was confused, as was everyone else. That's when I knew you were still alive somewhere, and it gave me hope that you were happy somewhere else, away from all this. I used my new abilities to destroy his army of zombies, and then I went straight after him. I was able to pull off one of his arms and one of his eyes. I was able to damage his mask so that Minato and Kushina could see that Madara, or Tobi, as he called himself, was really Obito Uchiha, one of your father's students. He used what little chakra he had from the tailed beasts to try to use the Gedo Mazo. He had only the 1, the 3, and the 7 tails. Everyone else had gone back to their own realm. The seal of the Shinigami made sure Kurama was dead for good, and the Death God made sure he would stay in the afterlife. Obito didn't have the right eyes to control the worthless statue, so it didn't work right. This gave me the chance to destroy it. I made the biggest Gudama I knew how to make and shot it at the statue. It was destroyed right away, along with Obito and Zetsu. I also set the other Biju free before sending them home. In the last battle, Orochimaru was finally killed by his own team, but Jiraiya and Tsunade also died. With only 1 arm and leg, the Raikage was barely still alive. When Kakashi and Guy came to the battlefield, they split the Tsuchikage in half. The rookies killed Kisame in a fight. All of them died fighting him, and Lee used all 8 gates to win. One of the Akatsuki members killed the other members of the group years ago. Sasori was killed by Sakura and Chiyo, and Deidara was killed in a fight with Kakashi, who tried but failed to blow himself up with him. After Asuma died, Hidan and Kakuzu were killed in a fight with teams 7 and 10 that followed. In the end, the 3 enemy villages were split between the other 3, and they chose me to be Hokage. I said yes because I promised to make your dream come true and change the village to how it was meant to be. Because you were the only man who would ever touch me, I even changed my name to Hinata Uzumaki. I changed the Hokage monument so that it also has you on it. I told you that you were the real hero of the war and that you were the reason I became the person I am today. It was also meant to show what can happen when someone works hard and stays focused. So, that's it. I was Hokage for about 50 years before I gave up my position. After that, I went around the world and helped as many people as I could. I died peacefully when I was 125. Naruto, Kushina, Minato, Kurama, and the others just stared in amazement. Hinata had come a long way from who she used to be. Naruto could not have been more proud of his queen. She proved everyone wrong and reached heights even he did not think were possible. He ran up to her and gave her a passionate kiss before grabbing her by the waist and spinning her around. You are amazing, my queen. Even my wildest hopes were not met. Hinata laughed and gave him a passionate kiss, which he returned with the same passion. The dragons let the couple enjoy their time together before speaking again. As you can see, Naruto, your partner grew up to be a very strong warrior. You were a sign of her strength and pushed her to become stronger than anyone else in her world could have imagined. Naruto frowned as he put Hinata down and looked at Thorin. It was Naruto Uzumaki who inspired her, he said. I haven't been like that for a very long time. I am Acnologia. I'm not the same person I used to be. Hinata hit Naruto on the head, which stopped him from going on and on. What the heck, Hinata? Hinata just looked annoyed. I hit you because you were again talking nonsense. You tell me you are Acnologia? So what? I told you I would follow you to the bottom of hell, no matter what. I would be with you until the end of time, even if you became the source of all evil. Are you listening? I love you. It doesn't matter if you were Acnologia or Naruto Uzumaki. No matter what, I will always love you until the end of time. Naruto just stared at the girl in front of him in amazement. How can she still say all that? She doesn't even know everything he's done, but he can tell that none of it will change her opinion of him. She will always love him. All he could do was look at her in amazement before giving her a hug and whispering, "Thank you," over and over. Hinata just smiled and returned the hug. See, my son. Even your queen thinks you are a good person. You might say you don't have anything good in you, but you're wrong. And what you've done in the past few years has shown that. Naruto gave him a strange look. Let's start with what you did first. Think back to the time you found Mavis Vermilion. She was left alone on her island when her parents died, and you could have left her there, but you didn't. During the years you were together, you helped her grow up. Then she went off on her own. You were the reason why Mavis became the great mage she was and how Fairy Tail came to be. Then there was the fight with Gildart's Clive, a human. You could have left him there to die, but you went out of your way to heal him and take him to a nearby town. Your actions with the people who kill dragons are another example of how kind you are. Do I have to tell you what you did on Tenro Island? Naruto just looked at Thorin and thought. Had he really been that kind and merciful without realizing it? He saved Mavis because he saw the greatness that was trying to come out. It was the same with Hinata, but there was something else in her that he had not seen in a long time. Tenro? He did not even need to remember. Those humans entertained him. Plain and simple. He saw the potential in those humans and tested them for that reason. Plus, his daughter was part of the guild, so he had to show some restraint. She was one of the dragon slayers he checked on from time to time. He felt an obligation to do this since he had a debt to repay to the dragons. The one he watched the most was his daughter for obvious reasons. She was his flesh and blood, and unfortunately was the youngest of the children to become a dragon slayer. She was only 5 when Grandini left, like the other dragons did. He even made small talk with her as she grew up in Kate's shelter. Part of him wondered why she became so attached to him after just a few visits. Did she know about him? Who he really was? It would explain why when he arrived on Tenro she was not scared like the rest. She was confused, but also happy? She was happy that the first thing he does when they meet again is to attack her and the rest of her guild, and not give any explanation? He thought that his daughter was very strange, just like her mother. Hinata then took a curious look at Thorin and said, "Thorin Otou Sama. Can you show me what my daughter looks like?" Thorin just smiled and turned to the chronicler, which showed an image of her daughter. Hinata squealed when she saw how cute her daughter looked. Even Kushina had hearts in her eyes. Hinata looked back at her beloved with stars in her eyes. Naruto-kun, what is her name? She queried. Wendy. Wendy marvels. Wendy. Same as the wind. A name that fits. Naruto, she is very pretty. Since she's our daughter, of course she'd be pretty. Naruto turned to the chronicler and said, Naruto. It's time to tell you why we brought you here. Naruto looked at the dragons with serious eyes. You know I'm the son of the dragon god of time, Dialga, right? Asked the chronicler. Naruto nodded. Well, as you know, I can sometimes see what will happen. Even though they are only small glimpses. They are more like dreams than visions, but they are likely to come true. In my vision, our world looks like it does 14 years from now. In this future, the whole continent is a wasteland where people live in constant fear and are almost extinct. What's up? The world has been taken over by dragons, which rule it with an iron fist. Naruto looked shocked. None of the dragons he knew would ever do that. Sure, there was Kurum, but even that sadistic ice freak had a code of honor. Who would dare do this? To answer your question, we don't have any friends among these dragons. These dragons were part of the Dark Army 400 years ago. They ate people. But how? Asked Naruto, shocked. I thought that most of those animals had been killed at the end of the war? How do they still have a pulse? Because they used a time portal to get there. Naruto stopped in his tracks. What? He said quietly. In 7 years, a gate to the eclipse will open. Someone will try to open a portal to 400 years in the past to kill Zeref before he became immortal and, by extension, stop you. But it didn't work. When the door was opened, something came out instead of going in. From the portal, 10,000 dragons came out and attacked all of Fury and then the rest of the continent. Naruto stood there in shock at what he had just heard, but he couldn't deny that what the man said made sense. During the war, several dragons from both sides disappeared through a portal in the sky. He had always wondered what happened to those dragons. He also growled that someone was trying to use one of Zeref's spells against him. Naruto looked at the two dragons. So you want me to go stop this invasion and destroy this gate in 7 years? Thorn shook his head. Naruto, we want more than that. It's time for you to let go of the shame and guilt you've been carrying around for 400 years. Zeref is going to start destroying the world soon, and you are the only person who can stop him. Let's not forget about the evil beings and pieces of the Dark Army that are still around the world. You should take this chance. You said you still feel bad about what you did to the dragons, so help the people. They will need help from you. The people who kill dragons need your help. You can help them more than anyone else. They would never let me help them, Naruto said, shaking his head. People would rather die or try to kill me than let me help them. Then you have to make them believe in you. He turned to Hinata, who just smiled at him. Naruto-kun, you've always done things that couldn't be done. People around you have been moved by you to do more than they thought they could. You did it for me, Wave, Gaara, Suna, Taka, Shibuki, and many other people and places. Please don't let this chance pass you by. Do it for our daughter if not for yourself. She deserves to be happy with the people she cares about. Naruto-kun, please do it for our beautiful little girl. Please. We need you to be able to have hope again. Naruto looked down and thought, could he do it? Could he really let go of all his guilt and start living again? He thought of Wendy's happy face with all her nakama, falling in love with a boy, walking her down the alley, and seeing her have children. He remembered what Kurama had said about not letting hatred consume him, to always move forward and never give up. Then he remembered something else, some very important words from the past. I said it, and I'll never take it back. That's what I think. My ninja way. A person is really strong when they have to protect something important. Naruto, never forget who you are. Kit, I'm happy to call you my ship. You are the only person I respect and trust enough to say they deserve it. Because of this, I'm proud to call you my son and my successor. Kit, I wish you luck in the next life. I'm glad you're my son, Naruto. You are the first person to have a dragon teach you magic. You're the first person like you. The first one to kill a dragon. The one who killed dragons for the Dragon King. Now go be proud of yourself. Don't grieve, Naruto. I don't think what you did was wrong. Don't forget that I'll always love you. I'll fight with you until the end, Naruto. Because I love you. I love you just as much as Anna does. You too make me whole. You are full of great potential. I'm aware of it. You are destined for great things, and I will help you get there by showing you the way. I'll be there for you, Mavis, I promise. I promise to save you, Naruto ni. The age of magic has come. The time when miracles started to happen. So, don't give up on people just yet. I know that fairy tale will save you from the darkness. I promise. It's the best promise I've ever heard. Don't be an outsider out there. Everyone needs to talk about their problems with someone. Even a stubborn brute like yourself. So, if you ever want a drink and someone to talk to, you can always come to my house. Make sure to stop by every so often. I'd like to see you a few more times before I finally die. Please take care of my child. She has a big load to carry, and I worry that she won't be ready for what comes next. Lucy is my sweetheart. Please help her. I promise to take care of you always. I'll make sure you live a full life and get the chances I didn't have. Wendy, I promise to always look out for you. I will always love you, my sweet daughter. He thought, that's right. Naruto Uzumaki always kept his promises. He had already broken so many, but it was time for that to stop. He won't break a promise he made to Hinata, his first queen, especially if it has to do with their child. Naruto looked at Hinata, then smiled at her and kissed her. He looked back at the dragons. I agree with what you say. I've been feeling sorry for myself, guilty and ashamed for too long. It's time to change. I won't let those wild dragons destroy the whole world. I'll help those poor people. I will kill Zeref and all the people who follow him. I also won't let those barbarians mess up the legacy you and the other dragons have left me. I am Marvel Naruto D. I am the first one to kill a dragon. I am Acnologia. I am the Dragon King. Everyone was happy with Naruto's decision. Hinata gave her cheek a kiss. Naruto wanted to know what he should do first. Well, first, we're going to take you back to Mount Zonia. From there, you have 7 years to learn something new, Thorin said. Naruto had a blank look on his face. Thorin gave his son a roll of the eyes. Don't look at me like that, Naruto. You haven't gone to school in more than 400 years. You've gotten out of shape and need to get back into it. Plus, you'll have time to learn how to use all of your powers. Do you understand that I mean all of them? Naruto gave a low growl, knowing what he meant. But to fight Zeref, he had to control all of his powers, and maybe that power will give him the edge he needs. Naruto let out a sigh and then nodded. Sadly, the chronicler gave a smile. Unfortunately, it is time to say goodbye to Naruto. Naruto looked broken, but he knew it would all be over soon. Just like everything good. He could see that everyone was getting worse. Kurama looked at Naruto. Naruto, you have made me a proud fox. I wouldn't expect my chosen vessel and son to do anything else. Don't ever forget who you were, and keep moving forward. Don't ever give up. Do me proud, kid. And when Kurama did that, the Kyuubi no Yoko went away. Naruto looked at Kushina and Minato. The three just stand there and look at each other. Look, Naruto started to talk, but they stopped him by hugging him, which left him speechless. You don't have to say anything, Minato told him. It doesn't matter to us if you hate us. We deserve it because we let you down. But remember this one thing, Naruto. Kushina said. No matter what, we will always love you. Before they disappeared, the two said the same thing. He didn't know what to say or feel and was completely at a loss. He turned to Hinata, the last person. He tried to say something, but he couldn't, which made Hinata laugh. She reached into her bag and pulled some things out. A worn-out blue headband with a leaf symbol cut into a flat piece of metal. A big red swirl on a black scroll. A necklace that has a green stone in it. The last thing was a picture of her dressed as Hokage. He looked at her with surprise. She gave a soft smile. There are some surprises in the scroll for both you and Wendy. The necklace belonged to you in the first place, so I'm giving it back to you. The photo is for you to keep, and I'm sure Wendy would like to see a photo of me. Along with my gift for you, there is an album in the scroll. You can keep my headband as a reminder of me. You wore my blood to fight Neji, so I hope you'll do the same with my headband. Naruto was happy. Promise me, Naruto, that you won't give up again. Make a promise to help those who need it. Watch out for Wendy. Please take care of her with love. Every girl needs to know that her daddy is there for her. I know you found love again and have more children. Naruto-kun, I'm glad you found someone who makes you happy again. Even though you lost them, you shouldn't stop loving someone else. So promise me that you won't be by yourself. Promise me that you'll try again to find love. Naruto, you need it. Please do your best because I want you to be happy. Hinata, I'll try my hardest. Hinata and Naruto kiss for the last time. I love you, Naruto-kun. And don't forget that I'll always keep an eye on you. Yes, Hinata, I love you too. My lavender queen. She is my moon goddess. I will love you until the end of time. Hinata kept smiling until she was no longer there. Naruto let out a few tears as he realized they were gone. Gone, but not forgotten. I'll always have them with me. He wondered. He looked back at the dragons. Thank you, historian. The dragon in the water smiled. I will see you soon. Good luck, young Dragon King. He died too soon. Remember, Naruto, that no matter what happens, I and the other Dragon Kings will always be with you to help you. Just look inside yourself. Don't lose sight of who you are. Goodbye, my son, and do well. Thorin gave off a bright green light that filled the empty space. I promise you, father. After that, Naruto lost sight of everything. When Naruto opened his eyes again, he was back on Mount Zonia as the sun was setting. He can see the gifts Hinata gave him in his hands. He wears the necklace and puts the scroll and picture in a pocket dimension he controls. He smiles and looks at the band. I promise I won't ever forget. He rips off the metal piece and puts it in his pocket dimension as he ties the blue cloth around his right arm and looks towards the orange-red horizon. The eyes that were full of anger, emptiness, grief, and sorrow now had a fire burning inside them. He didn't think the fire was still there. Acnologia was once again Naruto D. Marvel. This time, he wasn't going to let anything stop him. It's been 7 years. That long has passed since Acnologia attacked Tenro Island and the rest of the world, including the members of Fairy Tail. Acnologia went missing after the attack and hasn't been seen since. The attack didn't kill the core members of Fairy Tail who were on the island, but they paid for it. You see, they were able to escape Acnologia's attack because their love for each other had activated Fairy Sphere, one of Fairy Tail's most powerful spells. This sphere stopped the Dragon King's attack on the group. The strength of the sphere depends on how close the members are to each other. The shield is made stronger the bond. But the shield also made everyone on the island sleepy. They stayed that way for 7 years, and not a single one of them got older. Everyone was very surprised, but not as surprised as when they found out who helped cast the spell. It was the first master of Fairy Tail, Mavis Vermilion. She looked like a small teenage girl. She was small, and her long, pale blonde hair reached her ankles. On top of her head, there was a single band that went up. She wore things on her head that looked like wings. She was wearing a light pink dress with a red bow around the neckline. 3 blue diamond patterns and 2 blue triangles went around her chest. Each set of these has a hot pink outline. Her eyes were a deep emerald color and had no pupils. She also walked barefoot everywhere. Everyone was surprised to see the ghost of their guild's first master and founder. She seems to live on the island, and since only guild members could see her, she decided to stay there and think about her life. But after what happened with Acnologia, she thought she might want to go back to civilization to see how her guild has grown. The group of Tenro and the people who came to find them were dumbfounded, but they still nodded. After all, they couldn't turn down a request from the guild's founder. When they got back to the mainland, they couldn't believe how much had changed without them. Biska and Alzak had found each other at last. Even better, they got married and had a daughter named Asuka. It was a big surprise because everyone knew they liked each other, but they were too shy to say it out loud. Urza seemed to be the most surprised by this, which made the couple even more confused. The next shocking thing they heard was where they stood in fury. They had been the best guild, but now they were the worst in the country. Macau Canbolt had no choice but to become the 4th master of Fairy Tail. They had lost a lot of job applications in their guild hall. But when everyone from Tenro Island came back, they once again had hope. Hope that they could get better and be the best again in Fury. After a few weeks of partying and catching up, everyone in the guild realized something. They had no money at all, and they needed money fast. Makarov Drayar, the third master of Fairy Tail, decided that the guild needed a new leader if it wanted to get back on its feet. Makarov was in his late 80s. He had been in charge of Fairy Tail for more than 40 years and decided it was time for someone else to take over. He chose Gildarts Clive, the guild's best player, to be the guild's fifth master. Gildarts' first job as master was to let Makarov's grandson, Laxus Drayar, back into the guild. Laxus was in his early 20s and was built like a bodybuilder. He had short, blonde hair that was spiky. His eyes were a dark green color, and there was a lightning bolt scar on the right side of his face. He was wearing a black vest with gray fur at the collar and on the sleeves. He wore jeans that were blood red and black shoes. Everyone in the guild was happy about this news, but Makarov was just annoyed. Laxus used to be part of the guild, but he was kicked out when he tried to take over the guild for his own selfish reasons. He didn't come back until the fight on Tenro Island between Fairy Tail and a dark guild called Grimoire Heart. Funny enough, Gildarts' next move was to put Makarov forward as the sixth master. Everyone agreed right away, which shocked and scared Makarov. Gildarts told him he wasn't good enough to be master. He liked to go places, see new things, and have adventures. He liked being free, but he would stay to help the guild get back to the top. Plus, it gave him time to spend with Kana, his daughter who had just come out of hiding. He looked around and saw her where she always was. She was wearing her usual bikini top, maroon jeans, and black heels. She was doing what she always did with her wavy brown hair down. She was drinking barrels of spirits by herself. Her father didn't understand how she could drink all that beer and not get sick. She was even responsible for 30% of the guild's alcohol costs. But the man loved his daughter to death, a little too much, in Kana's opinion, because he was always clinging to her too much. Even though everyone else liked the way they talked to each other. Overall, everyone was happy to be back with each other. Everyone, except one person. She sat at a table near the back of the guild. In her early teens, she was a small girl. Her long, straight, dark blue hair reached her waist. She wore a long, green dress with a diamond pattern and sandals that tied around her ankles. Her dark brown eyes were completely amazed by the red heart-shaped jewel around her neck. Wendy Marvell was doing this. The Sky Dragon Slayer, and she is Acnologia's real daughter. Only a small number of people knew about something. Even the girl herself was one of these few people. She knew this because he used to come visit her when she was younger. Before she joined Fairy Tail, it had been almost a year since she had seen him. So, when he showed up on Tenro Island, she wasn't scared. Shocked and amazed by his looks and strength? Yes. Are you scared to death? Not even close. Because of the necklace she was wearing, she knew that man was her father. It was the last gift he gave before he left. It let her know that he was still alive somewhere, and when he was nearby, it lit up bright red. So, even when he turned into a dragon, it was easy to tell who he was. She didn't understand why he was there. He didn't need to be there unless it had something to do with Grimoire Heart or Zeref, but they were gone before he got there. She thought about something that must have driven him crazy. Then he attacked the whole guild out of the blue. Well, the word attack wouldn't be right. He was probably just messing with everyone. Gildarts had told them that his fight with Acnologia was over in less than 3 minutes, when Acnologia took Gildarts' leg, arm, and parts of his organs with one blow. He did wonder how he got away from the dragon and if someone saved him. Wendy knew that wasn't true, and Tenro Island proved what she already thought. They were having fun with Acnologia. He was putting them to the test to see if he should bother with them. You might think that spending time with your daughter would be your top priority, but she can't yell, "Dad," in front of all the people. She would be asked so many questions that her brain would blow a fuse. Plus, she didn't know how her friends would react or what the Magic Council would do to her if they ever found out that one of the most powerful and feared beings in the world had a child. She shook when she thought about it. That was probably one reason why he didn't get too close to her. To get rid of any link between the two. But she wasn't quiet because she couldn't talk to her father. It was how easy it was for him to beat everyone. Everyone, including the master, threw everything they had at him, but they couldn't hurt him. Even worse, she saw him smirk at them as they started to attack him. He made fun of them, trying to show them how weak they were in comparison to him. Even though this guild had 4 dragon slayers, none of them were able to even scratch him. All they could do was throw it into the sea. Even though it didn't bother him, he seemed even more amused than before. That hurt her sense of herself as a dragon slayer. Then he ran at them and fired his breath attack, which wasn't even at full power. Only because Master Mavis and Fairy Sphere worked did they get out with only minor damage. What total nonsense. Yes, the first master did save them, but Acnologia wasn't going all out for them. He didn't have to land on the island. He could have just blown it up when it came into his line of sight. Even when he did, he never told them to go to hell. He just walked around and stomped and huffed at everything. The fact that no one died is the best proof that her father didn't want to hurt them. No one who was hit by him died, and no one even lost a limb. Didn't anyone find that odd? He didn't think they were dangerous, which made the little girl frown. She never said this to anyone, but she always wondered if her team thought of her as a bother. She wasn't the best fighter, and unlike Natsu, Gray, and Urza, she was more of a supporter than a combat expert. She also wasn't very strong. Her best spells were her enhancements and healing spells. Whenever she fought a strong opponent, she was always pushed back and had to watch as someone else beat the bad guy. She was always left behind and had to rely on others, whether it was the battle with the Oracion Cease, the Dragonoid, the battle with King Faust in Edelus, or the disaster in Tenro. She tightened her grip on her hands. She had had enough of being weak. She needed to get stronger. But without the right teacher, how could she get stronger? She is pulled out of her thoughts when she hears her name being called. She looked up and saw that her team was staring at her in a weird way. The first was a boy in his late teens with pink hair that stood up in spikes. He had black eyes that were cut in half, and his body was thin but strong. He had on a long, black overcoat with gold trim in one sleeve. He wore black sandler shoes and a brown belt around his waist. His trousers were white. The boy stood out because of the white scarf around his neck and the emblem on the shoulder of his right arm. This was Natsu Dragneel, who fought and killed fire dragons. The second group was women with blonde hair and big brown eyes. She had a beautiful flower and a body with a lot of curves that made many people in the guild jealous. She had a pink symbol of the guild on the back of her right hand. This was a spirit mage named Lucy Heartfilia. The next person was a boy in his late teens who had spiky black hair, dark blue eyes, and a scar right above his left eye. He didn't have a shirt on, so it was easy to see that he was built like Natsu. He had a mark of the guild on the right side of his chest. He wore a silver necklace that looked like the handle of a sword with a stone on it. He wore black boots with dark cargo pants. This was Grey Fullbuster, the guild's residential stripper who made ice mage tools. The third was a woman with a similar build, but she was a little bit thinner and more muscular. Her red hair was long and reached her waist. Her skin was light, and her eyes were dark brown. Her chest and arms were covered in silver armor. She was wearing a blue skirt and brown boots. On her left arm was a blue guild symbol. Urza Scarlet was Titania, the fairy queen, an S-rank mage and the guild's strongest woman. The last person looked about the same age as Laxus, in his early 20s. He had long, black hair that was spiked up in the back and smoothed back in the front. His eyes were red, and the pupils were narrow. He had 3 metal studs where his eyebrows should have been. He also had studs on both of his guns, as well as 2 under his chin, 4 in his ears, and 2 on the sides of his nose. He has a black emblem of the guild on his left shoulder.
He wore a black tunic with no sleeves and beige trousers that were tucked into black boots that went up to his calves.
He also wore black gloves with spikes on them. The black wing-like ornament on his right shoulder that was attached to his tunic with a big stud was the thing that stood out the most. Gajiel Redfox, the Iron Dragon Slayer, was standing there. Along with the mentioned mages, there were 3 cats with wings. One was a male with light blue fur named Happy, another was a female with white fur named Carla and Wendy's partner and best friend, and the third was a black cat named Panther Lily. Wendy was surprised to see them, but she smiled at them and said hello to everyone. For a moment, she forgot about her dark thoughts. "So, everyone, why are you all here?" she asked in a nice way. Before they looked at Carla, everyone frowned. "Everyone is here to see you, Wendy, because they were worried about you." Wendy looked at them in a strange way. Carla didn't say anything when Carla asked, "Why are you all so worried about me?" "Because, child, you've been quiet and kept your distance from everyone for the past 3 weeks. When anyone sees you, you're in the back of the guild all by yourself staring at your necklace. We're worried about you, Wendy." Wendy lowered her head. She didn't mean to make everyone worry about her. She just had a lot on her mind. Sorry, everyone, I've just had a lot on my mind these last few weeks. Before they looked at the sky dragon again, everyone looked at each other. Wendy. When she turned around, she saw Natsu and Gajeel looking at her. Wendy jumped when she asked, "Does this have to do with Acnologia?" "Wendy, I know you're angry about how that jerk shot us down. He made us look like we were nothing, and even we dragon slayers couldn't stop him. He made us all feel like weaklings who couldn't do anything." Wendy began shaking. "We all feel the same way. He made us look like nothing more than bugs he was trying to swat. On the bright side, he showed us that there are a lot more powerful beings in the world that we haven't seen yet." Wendy and everyone else looked at him funny. "He made a mistake by not finishing us off. Now we have the chance to get stronger and become the strongest guild in Fury again. Then we'll find that scaly jerk and kick his ass for real. We'll show him that you should never underestimate Fairy Tail. Who's with me?" Everyone cheered to show that they agreed, and even Wendy's mood went back to normal. Then Lucy looked at Wendy and saw the necklace she was wearing. "Hey, Wendy, I love that necklace you have on. Where did you get it?" "I've had it for a long time. I got it as a gift when I was still in Kate's shelter." Urza was interested and asked, "Who gave it to you?" Wendy was happy. "My 2-chan gave it to me." This surprised everyone, except Carla, who frowned when Wendy's father was mentioned, since everyone thought she was an orphan like the other dragon slayers. "Wait, you have a dad? I thought you were like us."
You know, Natsu started.
Wendy finished by saying, "An orphan raised by a dragon." Natsu gave an awkward nod, "Since you don't make it clear that you're an orphan." It looked like everyone else felt the same way, and Urza let him know she didn't like him by slapping him on the head and telling him so. Ezra told the teen, "Natsu, you can't just say whatever comes to your mind. Think before you speak, and now apologize to Wendy." Natsu complained, but did what he was told before apologizing. Wendy laughed and shook her head to let him know that everything was fine. "Well, my 2-chan was the one who left me with Grandini, but he raised me until I was about 3 or 4. After that, I only saw him when he came to check on me at Kate's shelter. He was very secretive about himself, he didn't even tell me he was my dad, but I knew. I knew his scent, and I might have overheard some of his conversations with Master Rabaul, which made everyone laugh. She was not allowed to tell them he was on the island. Not yet, at least. Everyone laughed at this, but they also wondered what kind of person Wendy's dad was. Carla just laughed. She had never liked him. He was always very secretive, and neither he nor Wendy's mother were ever mentioned. She thought that man was a shady thug who didn't deserve to be Wendy's father. It was one of the many things they always fought about, but she decided to keep quiet this time. Lucy asked Wendy, "Hey, do you know what the necklace does?" Well, he said that the necklace was connected through a complicated mix of sealing and rune magic. The necklace is connected to his life force. If it's bright red, that means he's alive. If it's black, that means something is wrong with him, and if it breaks, that means he's dead. Everyone was impressed by how smart Wendy's father was. He must be a very strong sorcerer. If they had only known. Urza was impressed. Sealing and rune magic at the same time? That's an impressive feat. Only someone of Freed's level or higher could do that. Your father must be a master of the sealing arts, Wendy. Wendy gave her a big smile. Hi, my 2-chan is the strongest mage I know. No one could beat him. Natsu bragged, "Ha, I bet I could beat him easily." Wendy couldn't help but laugh at what her fellow Dragonslayer was doing. Gomen, Natsu-san, but I've seen you at your best and when you're pushed to your limits and beyond. My dad has no limits and is probably one of the strongest mages, if not the strongest in all of Earthland. So you have a long way to go before you could really challenge him. Everyone gave the girl a strange look. Was her father really that powerful, or was all the talk about him making him seem more important than he was? Again, if they only knew who her father was. Gajeel just smiled and walked up to Wendy to pat her on the head. Gihihihihi. Looks like our little Wendy is a daddy's girl. Right? Gajeel teased. Wendy turned red and pouted as she said, "I'm not," in a low voice. Everyone laughed at the girl's expense because of this. After he calmed down, Ezra told them they were going to see Porlyuzuka, a medical mage. When Wendy asked why, they said it was because she might have an idea for how they could get stronger quickly. Wendy nodded, and the rest of Team Natsu left to go see the recluse at her home on the edge of Mongolia. Gajeel and Lily chose to stay in the guild in case there was a fight. Poor Lyuzuka was not very friendly when the team met her. She was in her late 80s, the same age as Makarov. She had hot pink hair with 2 fringe on the front of her head. The rest of her hair was in a bun with 2 gold ornaments on each side. Her eyes were as red as blood. Her red cloak with a high collar and fangs on the top of the collar stood out the most. She told the mages that she had no interest in humans and that they should leave her alone. When they didn't stop, she came out with a broom and yelled at them to get off her property while swinging it around. The mages ran away in shock and fear, but Wendy looked back at the screaming women because one of them seemed familiar. When they could breathe again, everyone was still shocked by how violent poor Lyuzuka had been with them. Carla then saw that Wendy was upset by the look on her face. Everyone was surprised when she started crying when she asked. She said that her aura and smell were very familiar. The taste made her think of Grandini, the sky dragon. Everyone was shocked by this, and when they asked her if she was sure, she nodded. They started to talk about the idea that poor Lyuzuka might have been the one who raised Wendy. Lucy said this was not true because poor Lyuzuka has been around since Makarov's time and has always lived near forests. But dragons have been around for a lot longer, and all of them went away on July 7, X 777. For the dragon slayers, that means it's been 14 years since the dragons went away. This meant that there was no reason to think that the two were related. Wendy said that the two had the same aura and smell, but that their tones and attitudes were very different. Then poor Lyuzuka came out of nowhere from behind them, shocking the team. She told her that she wasn't the Grandini she was looking for, but that she was similar to her. She said she was from a world called Edelus, which is a parallel world. In Edelus, there is a version of everyone from Earthland that is the same as them. Grandini was like poor Lyuzuka to the Edelus. Something that made everyone surprised. Natsu wanted to know if Igniel, Metallicana, and the other dragons were like people. Poor Lyuzuka replied that she didn't know because she had never met them. She said that she had been stuck here for a long time. That's when she met Makarov. He helped her get used to this new world, and since then, she's been here. She then drops the bombshell that she has used her magic to talk to the Sky Dragon. She looked at Wendy and told her that she should learn these spells if she wanted to get stronger. She then pulls out 2 albums made of paper. She told her that the first one had 2 secret arts for dragon slayers for her to learn. She then said that the other one was shockingly given to her in person by her father. This caught the attention of Wendy's and the whole group. Wendy asked her right away if she knew where he was, but she gave a sad nod. He did, however, leave her a message. Get stronger, my Chibiheim, because the day we see each other again is coming soon. Wendy was embarrassed by the name, which made her blush, while the girls gushed about how cute it was and the guys just laughed. Poor Lyuzuka decided to go back home after giving her the spells. Wendy got out of her shame and thanked the old witch by calling her Grandini. As poor Lyuzuka walked away, she couldn't stop the smile that spread across her face. When the group went back to the guild, they saw Macau and his son Romeo fighting. Romeo said that taking part in the Grand Magic Games was the fastest way to become the best guild. It was made by the council so that guilds could compete and show who was the strongest without having to go to war. Fairy Tail, on the other hand, had lost every time the guild went. Plus, each year's games were always different. Romeo then told the master that the winner would get 30 million jewels.
This made the master say that they were competing. Everyone was happy and ready to win.
Romeo said that the games won't start for another 3 months. That was enough time to catch up and get ready for the games. Wendy couldn't wait to practice her new spells. Team Natsu decided to go to a place where they could train. Juvia and Team Shadowgear, which was made up of Levi Magarden, Jet, and Droy, were with them. Levi was a small girl with blue hair that reached her shoulders. She wore a yellow bandana around her head and an orange tank top. Jet was a young man with orange hair pulled back into a spiky ponytail. Droy, on the other hand, was a very obsessed black man with a strange hairstyle, a tuft of hair on top of his head that went up and curved forward like the stem of a plant. Then, the 8, plus Happy and Charla, went to get stronger. For such serious training, there was only one place to go. The ocean.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.